Hello, it's time to salvage some of these Bradford pears. Let me show you how to top work those and change these beautiful Bradford pears into something that produces delicious fruit. Come join me in the chaos. So as you can see, these are an amazing sight to behold in the early spring when they're completely covered with flowers. They kind of smell a little funky, but they are beautiful. The fruit, not so good, but I'm gonna show you how to fix that. All right, so like I said, these are Bradford pears. They'll have these little marble-sized pears on them that don't taste very good. And if you want to grow good pears on them, you can. A lot of people don't know this and they'll just chop them down. And I mean, these are 15-year-old trees, so that'd be a shame to lose these rootstocks. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna top work this where I basically take the top off. Something that you wanna do though, if you don't wanna dramatically damage the tree, is to make sure you prune them back in the middle of winter. So I pruned all these ones in the middle of winter. And so what I'm gonna be doing is I'm going to, now that I prune them to a reasonable height, I'm going to further prune them down to probably roughly about there, and then I'm gonna graft in some choice scions into them, which means I have branches, 1-year-old branches from better varieties, improved varieties of pears, like Bartlett's and Anjou and some Asian pears. I have a variety I got from a friend, and so I'm gonna be grafting those into these. You'll still want to make sure you have at least one branch. Like as you can see, these branches that I'm leaving on there, they're gonna be producing leaves to make sure this rootstock doesn't die. I don't wanna lose the tree. I don't wanna lose the rootstock. So if all else fails, I know that these branches are going to produce some growth, some leaf mass, leaf surface. It's gonna be doing photosynthesis to keep those roots alive. I did notice something really cool though that I wanna show you. So look at this one. So by pruning this late in the winter, I don't know if you can see it up here, get a better angle. You'll have buds, of course, that push through the trunk. If you look really close here. So it's anticipating that it's not gonna have very much leaf surface to do photosynthesis. And so it's trying to make up for that by budding right through the trunk. So I'm about to upset that because I'm probably gonna cut this to probably about right here or so, just because I would like this to have these choice varieties about that height. But I'm probably gonna leave on some of these native branches just to make sure I'm doing photosynthesis. All right, let me go get all set up. All right, so right before you bark graft, you wanna make sure you have a fresh cut. So I just took my pole saw, did a nice fresh cut right here. You can tell by the feel, it's a little damp. This cut right here is old. You can tell the difference, see how it's all dried out and cracked. This is gonna have a little bit of trouble because the cambium layer kind of withdraws. You still see that there's some growth right here. Look how far back that is. So that first inch or so is all going to be calloused off dead tissue. The live tissue is going to be about an inch below that. So if you do pre-prune, like I said, in the winter, you want to make sure that you cut off that area where you're going to bark graft. You'll feel that too. Like if you get in here and try to open this up to expose the cambium, you'll find that it's very dry and detached. Whereas right here, you can get the bark's actually slipping properly because I've removed that dead tissue. Same thing here. I'll just take this chunk off. Nice fresh wood. This cambium is going to be nice and fresh, perfect for grafting into. People keep walking by thinking I'm butchering my trees because, you know, I kind of am. I think they think I'm cutting them down, but I'll understand in a year. Maybe. Kind of an interesting growth pattern. Looks like two trunks kind of grew together here. That's weird. It's like an owl's face or something. Anyway, I'm bark grafting this as well. And that one over there. So I don't make this video too long, so I'm not going to do too many of these, but let me get my equipment and I'm going to go ahead and bark graft these. So something I didn't mention is I like to strop my blades before I do any grafting. can see this. So I have a leather strop, and I'll get my surface, and I'll put polishing compound on here, and then make sure my blade is nice and stropped. It's a lot easier with two hands, but you get the idea. Strop your grafting blade before. And this thing is insanely sharp. It does a perfect job at making sure that my grafting cuts are perfect. All right, so check your surface, make sure your surface is ready. I just like to make sure there's no edges that'll get caught, tear off that precious bark. All right, so you're gonna want a nice sharp blade, and then you're gonna push your blade into this outer bark, and you can kind of see this. If you look real close here, you can see where I wanna be. Push your blade in. Carrot. And then I like to use this blade because it's stronger and a little bit less sharp. Sounds strange, but I'm going to use this for a prying tool. I don't really want to pry with something that's like razor sharp because you'll just shear off the blade. And so what I'm doing here is I'm trying to slightly rotate this blade a little bit to see if I can slip this bark. This bark should be slipping, but again, this is an older tree. There we go. Got some bark slipping. We want to make sure we target the exact position where the bark is slipping away from the cambium. And I'm gonna flip my blade around a little bit, because we want to be in direct contact with that vascular system of the tree. That's like the veins of the tree. And so as long as your cuttings and your scion is in direct contact with that, you should get a successful graft. Right, that one slipped. Perfect. And I'm kind of bracing my arm as I'm doing this. You can't tell, but if this slips too fast, you don't want to just shear off a big chunk of the bark. So you kind of want to wiggle it to make sure that it's tearing away as you're pushing. This is really, really thin, so I'm probably not going to put one there. I'm just going to put it here. Ooh, that's not going to work. On these older trees, sometimes you have trouble. This tree is probably about 15 years old. And this outer bark isn't quite as pliable, as slippy. I don't know if there's a word for that. It's like teaching an old dog new tricks. It's hard to teach an old tree new something. Okay, that should work. So 1, 2, 3. A few to select from. Anjou, Asian, and Bartlett. Bartlett's pretty much what you buy in the grocery store. So most people are pretty fond of those. And then the Asian pears those are the big round ones you get at the grocery store that sometimes have that white netting stuff on them to protect them from bruising. So both these are pretty choice varieties. All three of these are. So I kind of want to do one of each. So I've been keeping these in the refrigerator since winter. You don't want these to be out of dormancy yet, because you want these to slowly emerge from dormancy as spring transitions into summer. First cut. Second cut. See how I make a wedge? Some people just make one flat cut and then they cut the back. I like to make a wedge because as the bark pulls away, see that wedge shape? That's the same shape you're gonna have as the bark is pulling away from the tree. And so in theory, that should perfectly align. These two cuts are perfect, but if they're not perfect, I've shown this in another video. If they're not perfect, you can always use a planer. Like if you're having whittling problems, if your blade's not extremely sharp, sometimes a planer can help. And then I like to brace the Scion as I'm pushing it in, just to make sure nothing weird happens. Kind of just want one even slice, and you notice how like perfectly flat that is. If you don't have one even slice, you'll have like multiple planes, and that can create a problem for your graft. Just like so. And then sometimes it's good if you must have a little bit of rot on the end there, just from sitting in the fridge for the last 2 months. Two. And notice how I have the wedge going into the cut, and then the flat part is going to be on the back. Alright, I'm going to take some of this wax. I like grafting wax, but you can probably make your own mixture. Soften it up a little bit, and you're just going to close up these incisions. That's just going to keep any unwanted moisture getting in, precious moisture from escaping. Again, there's more than one way to do this. This is just what works for me. The high school down the street's having a track meet or something today, so there's some announcing and shouting randomly in the background. Good enough. And then this grafting wax is actually really useful for this right here. Got a little bit of this grafting wax at the end of your tape. You ever have that problem where your electrical tape kind of lifts up? A little grafting wax under there. And it really tacks up that surface and keeps that from happening. This isn't required. Some people actually discourage this, but I mean, I bought the stuff, so I'm gonna use it. I would highly recommend making sure the wood's not too wet, but this has been sitting here for about 45 minutes since I cut it, so that's enough, but it's not too wet. So this compound is supposed to be bacteriostatic. Shouldn't allow the breeding of fungus and bacteria on that surface, so it should be able to protect it from moisture loss and do all the things that it's supposed to do. Just make sure you don't get any of this in the actual grafting area. So if you have a nice closed graft, you should be good. So we'll see what happens. I'll post some results when I find out about how all these did. Anyway, thanks for joining the cast.